So Andrew was telling me that he's done some investing, it's been quite successful, and that he's now bought a storage unit or has bought a storage unit, which has gone up in value, but maybe it's topped out in value, and you're thinking about something else. And I started recording, so you're going to tell me what that something else is.
Yeah, so what I wanted to look at doing was selling this urban storage shed and buying a rural acreage and doing some kind of camping or glamping
Right.
on it. In Australia, there are a lot of websites dedicated to camping. So
Yeah.
people can just jump onto a website and you can put your property up. It's a lot like an Airbnb, I suppose.
Sure.
But for me, the benefits of that are that I don't have to get cleaners and be mucking around too much with it. So I think
So,
there's a lot more
I missed
upside.
something there, Andrew. You said you don't
Yeah.
have to get cleaners. Why is that?
Well, if people are just camping with tents on your property, then you probably only have to go out, say, once a month, do a bit of a tidy up, check everything out. But I think there's a lot more upside to camping. So you can technically, charge people $20, $30 a night to camp on your property. And maybe you get 5 people out there on, if your property's big enough, maybe you allow 5 people out there with 5 different sites at $30 per person, I think it is. Or I've seen other campgrounds. They just have a fee for the family, so it's $65 for your site. It doesn't matter how many people are going on there. I think that's probably preferable. And you just go, okay, it's a fixed price for that site. I don't really care if you have 10 people there or not. It doesn't really affect anyone else if it's a big enough premises. So I think you could do that. But I think while that revenue stream seems very small, I think there's a lot more potential upside for upselling people. So you could have, say, access to the woodshed for $5 a night so that you don't have to split your own wood, or you put some vending machines under a cover where you've got sunscreen and bug sprays and all the things that people tend to run out of or forget, some bottled water, and the like. So I think it's something that you can continue to build up. So you put like a very simple shed up at the beginning with some vending machines, a wood storage shed maybe, and then you can keep building it up over time and then keep raising your prices to a certain extent, or add extra features. So you leave the raw camping at the bottom end of the property, and then you put in some glamping cabins or teepees or something along those lines. But at that point, it does become more like an Airbnb. So you will need to find some local person from town that will come in and clean up after guests and tidy up and all that kind of stuff. So, but I would prefer to start very small and very raw. And I think that's something I can do with a pretty empty rural property,
So
where I
one of the
can
things
build
that
up my expertise in how all this stuff works as well.
I love it. I mean, it's a really good idea. I call that the phase zero. You talk about, phase one, phase two, phase three, you probably are working on projects that span decades, the government of Australia, and they go phase one and we'll spend $1 billion, phase two, we'll spend $10 billion, phase three, we'll spend $30 billion. And, they're talking long-term. So I talk about phase zero all the time to my clients. Hardly anybody understands that. And the reason for that, Andrew, you're going to laugh, is that I can give a 3-hour lecture on self-capitalization, sweat equity, and starting small, phase zero, whatever you want to call it, how to, just start something. Like I'm quite good at that, right? And I'll do a 3-hour lecture, and students will come up to me, "Oh, that was a great lecture, professor. I really loved it. It was so interesting. But I want to start a business, and I need $1 million, right?" And I said, "Well, we just went through a 3-hour lecture on self-capitalization. Oh yeah, but that's for everybody else. But I want rich Uncle Buck to come and give me $1 million so
Yeah.
I could start a business." And I tell you, of all the things that I teach, this is the worst, and not worst, but the least understood part of what I teach. And it falls completely on deaf ears because, unfortunately, at least in North America, may be true in Australia, but in North America, we read about a young guy, not even maybe just out of high school. He started a blogging service called Tumblr, And a year later, maybe 14 months later, he sold it to, I don't know, Yahoo for 1.2 or 1.4 billion US dollars, And they say, well, that's what I want. But you might as well say, I'd like to be Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd like to be
yeah, that
Taylor
would be
Swift.
kind of neat. She's
Yeah.
popular. She's an attractive woman. She's talented. She's got a nice
Yeah.
boyfriend. I mean, yeah, I mean, okay. Or I'd like to be, I don't know, one of those tall basketball players. I think LeBron James. Yeah, I'd like to pay $35 million a year to play basketball, except I'm not 7'2", and you aren't either, Andrew. So
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
they also don't see that LeBron James, from the time he was probably 5 years old to the
mhm.
time he was 15 years old,
Oh my God.
spent 10 hours a day playing basketball.
Well, he's playing all of his time playing basketball. I mean,
Yeah.
14 hours a day, every day,
Yeah.
practicing. But it also helps that he's over 7 feet tall
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
weighs
He's
300
got the
pounds
right
and is a
body.
mountain,
He's got the right brain for it,
right?
you know,
And the
and
skills.
yeah, that's it.
When I teach phase zero to people, that is something that I just can't get them to grasp. And you know the barn dominium project, right?
Yep.
You remember that? It's the barn. I turned it into, I don't know, 8 or 9 workshops. And then I added a tiny house. And then I added another tiny house. And I'm going to add another tiny house. I mean, that is phase zero all the way, right?
Yeah.
And so I really like your plan. The one concern I have, and I wanted to ask you this question, the one concern I have is the zoning question, right?
Yes. Yeah, me too.
Like the one thing that I just want, and it's not a red flag, it's just I want you to be cautious because you're very cautious, you're much more cautious than I am, which I totally respect. And I could learn something from you for sure. But the one thing I want you to be cautious about is to see if you can find a property that has commercial tourism zoning. Now, I don't know the Australian zoning, mantra, but it's probably very similar to New Zealand, the United Kingdom, to Canada, to the United States. Many countries have the same system now. So it's called commercial tourism zoning, and it might be called something different where you are. But I would like you to find something. And what clients of mine do, because I've got a number of people in the States and Canada doing pretty much what you just described. They go and they talk to a township, a town, a city, a county, whatever they call them in Australia, and they go and see the planners and they say, look, my name's Andrew Firestone. I really like the snowy mountains. My boys ski, I ski. We enjoy it in the area, and I'd like to buy some land in the area. And I'm thinking about buying something that has a zoning that would allow me to camp out there, but my buddies. So one of the things you don't do is you don't go and see a planner and say, I'm planning to build Disney World in your neighborhood. Because as soon as they hear that, they'll trot out their planning books, which is bigger than a Bible, right? And they treat it as if it was the Ten Commandments, right? As if it was written by God. Of course, it was written by human beings. And they'll say, "Oh my God, um, uh, oh my God, we got a crazy man here, and you know what NIMBYs are, right? Not in my backyard types. You've got them in Australia too, I guarantee it. And they'll say, "Oh my God, another Firestone," because if they search your dad's name, it'll be all over the friggin' internet. They'll say, "Oh my God, he's going to build the Palladium here, and we're going to have Disney World here, and we got to trot out all the NIMBYs and you'll have pickets, people booing you on stage." So you just say, "Look, I'd like to buy a few acres in your area. I'd like to be able to camp on it, maybe, put something, a building on it someday, a house on it. Um, and I'd like some of my buddies to be able to come and camp too. So it's probably best if I find something that has some kind of a commercial tourism designation. Can you show me your zoning maps? And
I've
so,
tried to look it up.
mhm,
And it looks it's unclear. I'd have to go and talk to the Snowy Mountains Shire.
exactly. Oh, they call them shires.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah. So I'd have to go and talk to them, or just email them. Email is often better because then it's all written down. You can't
Yep.
trust these people. But yeah, again, you'd be pretty circumspect. You're just like, hey, I was kind of thinking along the lines you were saying. You could even give them the website to the camping website and go, hey, there's all these great listings. I'd love to be able to do this. you
Yeah,
know,
whatever you feel
have,
comfortable in, but what you definitely don't want to do is you don't want to become your own worst enemy.
yeah.
I'm the master of that. Okay, so I have, you know, if I take off my shirt, which would be really horrible, I have all the scars on my back. So you know, I've been on stage in front of 300 or 400 people booing me, yelling at me. I know where you live. I know what kind of car you drive. You know, threatening my family. So yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, you build an arena, and obviously people notice. Um,
yeah,
so, but in your case, you know, just me and a bunch of buddies might do some camping. So probably, what would tell me
yeah,
what kind of zoning I would need to do something like exactly what you said.
yeah.
But you don't pick a campground that has 1,000 campsites. You pick something that has,
No,
like you said, you know, eight campsites or 10 campsites on it.
yeah,
What
that's
do you need
it.
to do in order to do that?
Yeah. So I've just sent you a link.
I saw
So
it.
I sent you the first link I sent you was 350,000 for
Yeah, I
a
saw
really
that.
sloping block that's very wasn't there's nothing there. This other link I found, it's got buildings, it's got water rights, and it has a working, I'm going to put that in quotes, working berry farm on it. It
Yep.
looks it looks rubbish, but this would be the kind of place that would list really well. I think for camping and for this site. So if I was to send them, because there are a lot of kind of working farms that list people to come. You know, it's kind of a feature. You know, come and camp, pick some summer berries.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, all that kind of stuff, right? But it also, but most importantly, it's got toilets, it's got showers, it's got water rights, which is a big one,
Yeah, it's a big one.
and it's got building permits, right? So that other one, you can't build any permanent structures on it.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that. A lot of my clients in the States and in Canada are doing exactly the same thing. They're buying an existing farm that has a barn on it and some kind of primitive house on it, perhaps, or maybe it needs a lot of repair. It has some storage sheds. One of my clients bought, I should show it to you if I could find it. Hang on a
Yeah.
second. Give
But
me
this
one
this
second.
451 is out of my price range in terms of self-financing. So I probably would need some kind of finance to swing it.
Yeah, you probably would, but you will qualify for financing, Andrew.
No, I know.
You don't like it, but you can get it.
Well, it's with self-managed super funds. So all this. So I should premise all of this stuff to say that to explain to people that all of this investing I'm doing is actually through my superannuation fund. So in
Yes,
Australia, we
I
have
remember you
a
telling me that.
self-managed
Yep,
super fund system.
yep.
But so yeah, in my personal life, I have no money and no equity, but my super fund is doing terrific.
Yep.
Yeah, so my personal life is still a dumpster fire, but you know,
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
other
but
side of
it'll
things, I'm doing
change,
great.
Andrew. Listen, you're 48 or 49 is not old. I mean, you know, I
Uh,
had to start over at age 54, so you're way ahead of me. Let me share this. So this is a property one of my clients, oops, sorry. But can you see my screen okay?
yeah, it's perfect. I'm not looking. I've got two screens, so I'm looking over here. So
Yeah,
the
that's fine.
camera's that way,
No,
right?
no, it's fine.
I,
So this
I'm
is
not giving you
a
the cold shoulder.
beautiful little farm
Oh, lovely.
that my client bought. It's about 44 acres in total, so it's not big. And it had two humongous sheds on it, an old barn here, a house, and a garage. And I'll just show you. Um, these are just a little bit closer in. So these sheds, Andrew, are I think about 10, 8 to 8. I think this one is 8,000 square feet. Do you think in square feet, or do you need it in meters?
Meters, please.
Okay, so this would be about 750 square meters, and this one would be closer to 1,000 square meters.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why on earth would a 44-acre farm need sheds that large?
That's a great question. I'll answer it in a minute. So these are just, again, we're just getting a little closer into these buildings. These are fantastic buildings. These are really industrial buildings, to be honest with you. It
Mm.
is zoned for agriculture. And I don't have to tell you, I'm sure it's true in Australia. it's certainly true in the United States and Canada, that farms have humongous buildings on them for livestock, for machinery, for making stuff. I mean, it's like the kibbutz in Israel. They've got all of these so-called farms have like huge industries going on these kibbutzes, and so it's very similar to what you see here. So the answer to the question you just asked me is this one, I think, yeah, this building here, this is where they grow marijuana.
Knew it.
So they have like these are like grow rooms. It's legal in Canada. We're not talking about an illegal operation. Okay,
Yeah.
so this particular farm has an industrial weed operation, which you see here. And then this one here is used for like mini storage, like people can come in and store stuff, or small workshops, because there's 1 million people in Australia and there's probably 1.5 million people in Canada who have side hustles. And there's probably 10 or 15 million, and they need workshops. So this one, actually, I think this is the building, sorry, Andrew, this is the building that has the weed operation because it has all the AC here, right? And this is the building that are workshops and storage. So you can see inside these buildings, these are fantastic buildings, right? And they're perfect for storing boats, RVs, or you call them caravans, and to divide it up into small workshops too. Then this is a house, it's I think a 2 or 3 bedroom house. It's not particularly fancy, but there's a tenant in here. And then over here, this is a garage that was turned into a workshop. So again, you could have a live-work condition. So somebody could have some kind of side hustle going here, maybe a carpentry business, and then he or she could live here. And this is just the main entrance to the farm. And then this is just an aerial photograph. So now you can see the buildings up here, and you can see the whole farm is here. All right. Just another aerial photograph here. It's quite beautiful. And then I don't know if I have it in this. I'm just going to get out of the share for a moment, and I'm just going to see if I have in this particular diagram. This is something that I think you'll really enjoy if I could find it. And the small workshops, I got that. Oh yeah, here it is. I did find it, Andrew. So my client bought this. Hang on a second, brother. I got to find you again. Where are you? Oops.
I'm just bringing up so I can convert hectares to acres.
Oh, okay. So 44 acres would be about 18 hectares.
Gotcha.
Okay. So
Yeah.
sorry, I'll speak in metric because I think I am bilingual. All right.
Yeah, I'm not bilingual.
No, it's fine.
I have to look it up.
That's okay. I'll show you. So my client bought that 18 hectare farm with all of those buildings, Andrew, and I'm just trying to recall, but I think it was about 900,000 Canadian dollars, which
Yeah, that sounds right. How far out of town is it?
fantastic. I mean, if you were to build those industrial buildings today, about 800, no, more than that. Just give me a second here. About 1,800 square meters. Okay, you would spend probably just on those industrial buildings. You probably spend $2 million. They're expensive to build. There's power. There's water, there's bathrooms and septic systems, drilled wells, because in Ontario, you drill a well, you don't suck the water out of the lake or river. You can, but most of us use drilled wells. So
yeah, you have to go through Matthew's massive list to get any of that stuff done, right?
Yeah. Plus, I mean, the planning hurdles are significant. I'm sure they're just as terrible in Australia as they are here. Or maybe not as bad, but pretty bad.
Oh no, terrible.
Okay, well, misery loves company. I feel better now. So Alex, who owns this property, bought this, rented out the house, rented out the workshop, divided up that one building for storage of boats, RVs, caravans, trucks, buses, snowmobiles, ATVs, and some workshops. All right. So he's done very well with that building. On the other building, he leased it to a company that comes in and grows legal weed, right? Marijuana, cannabis. But he had on this screen here, he had an extra, I'll convert it to hectares. He had he had about 7, maybe not quite that much, 6 hectares of beautiful agricultural land, which you can see here. And he was getting about $250 per hectare per year from a local farmer who would come in and just farm it. So so he would get about $1,400 a year from this field, okay? Excuse me. And you know, and he didn't have to do anything. He just got $1,400 for it, and he was happy with it. But I told him about the Russian Dachnik movement. Do you know what the Dachnik movement is? Do you remember?
Yeah, we've talked about it.
I think we have. Just because we're recording it, I'll repeat it.
Oh yeah.
So the Russians during the communist period basically were starving. I mean, they had these communal farms, and certainly don't have to tell you, Andrew, that communal farms don't actually work. You know, the Russians had a very an expression that they used, very common expression, which was, they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work. And that was, you know, for the 80 years that the communists were in power in Russia under the Soviets, those communal farms were very unproductive. They produced some food, but not a whole lot. I think about
Yeah, but comrade, if you had 2 houses, would you give me one? Of course I would.
yeah, well,
But
they
if
would
you had
shoot.
2
They would
cars,
shoot you first, and then give you the house.
but comrade, if you had 2 cars, would you give me one? Of course
Of
I
course,
would.
yeah. Until they're
But
in power, then
comrade, if you had 2 chickens, would you give me one? No.
do
Why
do
not? Well, I
yeah.
actually have 2 chickens.
Yeah, oh, right. But you know, there's another Russian proverb that goes something like this: 2 kulaks are walking along, you know, in the countryside in Russia. And have you heard this one before?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one kulak, again, just for the record, the one kulak says the other, "You got money?" And you know, "You got whatever, ruble?" "Yeah, I got ruble." And he says, "Old lady there, she got, you know, goat." And "Oh yeah, you go talk to old lady." So the Russian kulak goes over there, the one with the rubles, and he comes back, and the 2 guys are walking on, and he turns to the other kulak. "Oh, we got goat." "Yeah." And the Russian says, "Yeah, we got ruble." "Yeah." Right? That's Russia for you. It's one of the reasons why the Russian economy other than oil and gas does not exist. I mean, it is really, that is a country that is really out of control. Let's talk about this. So the Russian Dachnik movement is actually 1,000 years of age. Dachnik is just a Russian term meaning gardener. And on a hectare of land, a Russian Dachnik, a gardener, could grow enough food for his family on a hectare of land for his family, and probably 2 or 3 other families for the year. They were largely organic. They didn't have a lot of you know, modernization or equipment or automation, and they were able to, you know, just by hand cultivation and careful you know methods, they were able to raise quite a bit of food. And they fed there were 30 million of these gardeners, the Dachniks. They fed about half of the needs of the Russian people for 80 years. So it worked pretty well. So on a hectare, you can grow quite a bit of stuff. And if you know what you're doing, you can really do well. And of course, you're somebody who has those skills. So one of the things that I said to Alex that he might do with this 6 hectares is I don't know if you can see on the screen here, he could put little bunkies on there. And when Alex and I first talked about it, it's now a few years ago, you could put in Ontario, you could put a shed, basically a bunkie on your property, as long as it was not more than 10 square meters. All right, and there's probably similar rules where you are. You can put a shed in your backyard as long as it's not too big, without you know, a building permit, which is very important for this model. And so so Alex went out, and I can't remember exactly how many, but 13 or 14 or 15 of these little bunkies. They're cute as hell, and they're kits. They come in kits, and you could buy them for about $10,000 each. They come in kits, and you can assemble them. And then he went on to his 6 hectares of land, and he carved out little 450 square meter gardens, so not a hectare, right? 450 square meters, so not really big. In imperial units, about 5,000 square feet, metric about 450 square meters, and he put one of these bunkies in each one. And yeah, he bought them from a company called bunkylife.com, I think. So they were on sale for $999.95. It's obviously a hell of a lot cheaper than $10,000, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, save $5. But they're
But
really super
at
cute.
least they don't put cents in. It drives me nuts when they put cents in as well at
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
it's
a price
ridiculous.
point, and you're like,
Um,
at 25 cents, you're like, what are
yeah,
you
yeah,
gonna do with the 25 cents on the
I have no idea.
$10,000?
But anyway, Andrew, you could see if you look, I don't know if you could see these pictures, but inside,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's not very big, but inside there's actually a loft. So you can sleep two people in the loft and then two people on the ground floor. This thing is 10 square meters, right? But it has this loft. You can fit four people in there. So I'll stop sharing now for a moment. So what Alex did was he rented each of these plots and Bunkie year round, 12 months a year for I think $500 a month. And in Canada it was $500 a month. Yeah, that was approximately what he got. Maybe it was 600. I don't really remember. So he had 14 of them at times $600 a month times 12. So instead of making $1,400 a year, he was making 100,000, just over $100,000. So I always ask this very tough question: what is better, $100,000 a year or $1,400 a year? You shouldn't take that long to answer it.
I'm just waiting for the hard part.
No, that was the hard part.
That was the question.
That was the
Okay.
question. So I mean,
Okay. I didn't
again,
realize
so
that was a question. I thought that was a statement.
no, I said, what is better? So the reason I show you that model is that if you buy a farm, now again, I don't know all the zoning ins and outs. So, but he did get a visit from a bylaw officer, and I was present for that. He asked me, because usually some neighbor complains, right? And so we met the bylaw officer on site, Alex and I, and we actually had a pretty good discussion. And I said, look, Mr. Long is allowed to have sheds on his property. He already has, huge industrial sheds, which were approved by the city. And he has these, they're all under the the maximum size that you're allowed without a building permit. And in actual fact, what Alex is doing is actually promoting agriculture. It is absolutely consistent. And then I gave the story of the Russian Dachnik movement, and it goes back 1,000 years. And now you've got 14 families that come here. They spend an hour and a half every day. They tend to their little plots. They sit around. There's like a little bonfire place. And if you remember Red Pine Camp, Alex built like a council ring, an Indian council ring, if you remember that. So they could have a nice fire in there, and they could sit around and have a couple of beers. If they were Russians, they would have vodka, and and play their guitars, and have some fun. And the kids would come, the adults would come. They do that, and it was a tremendous success. And in fact, the productivity of the agricultural land went up, not down. So the bylaw officer said, well, this is quite new to me, and I'll have to go back. The typical. I have to go back and talk to the powers that be in the city of Ottawa, make sure that you're not breaking any of the bylaws. That was about 4 years ago. We haven't heard from him since. So again, I don't know exactly what you would do, but Alex, again, I can't coach this either. I can suggest it, but it's up to you because you're obviously the independent thinker here. Alex is an independent thinker. 2,500 other people that I coach are independent thinkers. I said to them, you have to make these decisions, but for myself, I would not ask anybody's permission. Because if you go to the city of Ottawa and say, we're going to bring the Russian Dachnik move to Canada, they're going to bring a group of farmers together. They'll bring the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Food together. They'll have a committee, and they'll study it for 2 to 4 years, and then they'll give you an answer, and it'll be no. So again, I can't coach that. I can say, Alex, it's up to you. But he was making $100,000 a year more from his farm, and actually he felt, providing 14 families. And by the way, he has room for like another 15 or 20 of them if you figure it out. Like he can expand this operation as much, because it's quite 6 hectares is when you're talking about 450 hectares per quote unquote farm, right? You can put a lot of those there. You lose about 30% to circulation space, but still, the numbers could be much bigger. But he's quite happy. He's making out like a bandit. I mean, if you think about it, he bought the damn thing for about $900,000. Had all of this stuff. He didn't have to do very much to renovate it. Then he didn't, and by the way, he did a phase zero. He didn't buy 14 bunkies at $10,000 each. He bought, I think the first batch was 4 or 5. And he put them up for lease, and he put up that white picket fencing, so it looked really pretty. And he put up the council ring, and he has a bathroom as well that's accessible from the outside. So he had a bathroom, a shower, that sort of thing. But these are not permanent occupations, right? These are places where you can come. You can put your tools in your shed. You get tired because you had a couple of beers. You can lie down for a nap for an hour. Your kids, I mean, people have camped there overnight in those bunkies for sure. But, in Ottawa, you only have basically 113 days of summer. So, it's a pretty short season. These are not all season, but he charges, it's either $500 or $600 a month year round because it's your plot, it's your bunkie. Yes, you can't use it. Certainly you can't use it in December, January, February in Canada, but that's, you want it, that's yours. Or he could alternatively charge, $1,500 a month for 6 months, or he could charge $500 a month for 12 months. So you know what I'm saying? You can play with the numbers.
Yeah.
So there are different models, Andrew, that I think if you're on the right track, if you could find a farm that, maybe it's fairly run down, there is one other vector that you can use. The other vector that some of my clients use, and I'm not saying this would be right for you because I like the farm model, I think better for you, but there are some other people who are buying campgrounds that have fallen on hard times. And in North America, again, I don't know the Australian market, but in North America, in the States and Canada, there are literally thousands of campgrounds available for sale, thousands. And the reason for that is that the kids and the grandkids have seen how hard grandma and grandpa worked on their godforsaken campground, didn't make any money. The kids don't want it and the grandkids don't want it. So, grandma and grandpa go off to heaven, and the kids go, what the hell? Or if it's if they're old enough, it's the grandkids doing it. They go, what the hell? I don't want this broke down ass campground. And they put it up for sale. One of my clients bought a campground. It had, I think, 8 RV sites with water and power and septic. It had 3 camping cabins. It had 3 houses, and it had 117 acres, so about 50 hectares of land, 4,000 feet, which would be like over 1,000 meters of waterfront on the second best fishing lake in Ontario, and room for about 150 campsites. They bought it for 700,000 Canadian dollars. That's like zero money. And again, in this particular case, Andrew, it was an older gentleman. I knew him. In fact, I helped him sell it. An older man, even older than your dad, an older man and his wife, and he really wanted his son to take over the business, but unfortunately, his son had a terrible car accident and suffered significant brain damage. He was still able to go fishing, he was able to talk, but he wasn't able to do any of the higher level thinking that you would need to do to manage this kind of a business. So he had to sell it, and because he was just getting too old to manage it anymore. And I told him it's ridiculous that you're going to sell it for $700,000. Now, having said that, I put it on the market with my small real estate group. It was up for sale for over a year. I couldn't believe it. I wanted Jessica to buy it, your sister, Jessica, because she likes that kind of stuff. But she was too young, and she wanted to hang out with her friends. She was like all the other 20-somethings and 30-somethings. They want to hang out in downtown Toronto or downtown Sydney, have a drink after work, and be where all the cool people are. The idea of living in on the lake, 100 kilometers from, a big city, they thought, and you actually have to work. They thought, well, that's a real drag. I can tell you that Jessica, now in her 30s, would have a different answer, and you're in your 40s, so you might have a different answer too, because to be honest with you, hanging out at clubs when you're 49 or 72 is really not that cool.
Hmm.
There's my lecture for the day.
Yeah, I love it. And what I like about your comment as well about, you have to leave it up to each person to find their own sort of unique business model.
Yep.
But I think it's important to still talk about what other people are doing, so you get these things happening in the back of your mind, like how are you going to scale up, or are there extra income
Yes.
streams I'm
Yes.
leaving,
Yes. So let me show you.
untapped?
I actually did prepare for this, and I don't know if you noticed it on your email. I actually spent a few hours today writing an article. So it's Mr. 1000% ROI, because at least in my thinking, Andrew, this is just me talking through my hat. That at some stage, in my opinion, you should teach people the 1000% ROI. I think you should teach that. And one of the things I asked you to think about was, and I love your phase zero. I love it. But if one day you were to move to this place, people would come. In my opinion, would come from all over to learn from you and others that would be there. Traditional skills. And you obviously you can have an internet dimension to that. I mean, on Zoom you could teach 50 people the 1000%, Mr. 1000% ROI, all the stuff that you do, and you may not realize it, or maybe you do, but the stuff that I got to know you better, obviously, because we spent some time together, and that was a wonderful time for me, Andrew. So again, thank you for that. But one of the things that maybe you don't appreciate of your own self is how much I think people can learn from you. How to invest, how to control your costs, how to rediscover traditional skills that can provide you and your family with $60,000 to $70,000 per year additional family income with no friggin' income tax. And all this stuff so I wrote that up based on our conversations in Australia and the spreadsheet that we did. But I need you to go through it, because there's some things that I'm not sure about, and I'd like you to add to it or change it and answer some of the questions, okay, when you have time.
Yeah, I only just saw it just before 10 minutes before this, so I've skimmed through the first half, I think. But yeah, when I read the first little bit, I was kind of feeling a bit shy, and then I got into it. I'm like, oh, this is actually really good.
Okay,
Who
well,
thought of
I
all
hope
this stuff?
so.
This is
Well,
really genius.
you may not believe it, but I am a good writer.
Yeah.
It's a fun article. I really enjoyed it. It took a few hours to do, and it can be improved by you, I'm sure. All right. So one of
Yeah.
the things that
But
just before I show you that,
oh, yeah.
I was going to tell you one other story about skill sharing.
Yep. Before we start, this is kind of why I was trying to premise the start of the talk as well, about how I've got, the way I view it is, I've got my superannuation, which is kind of like my incorporation of myself. It's like my business side of things. That's going great. But then I've got the other facet, which is around my personal income and my personal projects. So I guess that's where I'd like to go as well. So we kind of talked about, okay, what next steps for my super fund is probably to, keep moving towards assets that are undervalued and fix them up. But then on the personal side of things, I've been mulling this over, and I think there are opportunities, as you say, on the coaching, the YouTube type front. There's also newsletters as well. So there's Zoom classes and retreats and that kind of stuff. But then you could also probably supplement that with newsletters. So if you can find 1,000 people that will pay you, $2 a month for a newsletter, that kind of gives you a nice steady platform to build from.
All right. So since you brought it up, one of my clients writes a newsletter, and I'll show it to you here. It's called briefcase.email, and it's focused on real estate. And he started this about a year and a half ago, and I coach him. His name's Brad Karche. He's a brilliant young man. He's younger than you. He's in his mid-30s. He's a family man like you are. And he's very successful with it. So he's had 40,000 people sign up, but it's a free newsletter, but he has sponsors. So the
Okay.
way this thing makes money is, think about a real estate newsletter. Who would the sponsors be? A mortgage broker, a bank, um, a renovator, right? A supply house, that supplies lumber or tools or whatever, equipment rental. I mean, it's just endless, right? So if you're going to start a newsletter, this is a better, in my opinion, this is a better way, I think, to do it than to ask subscribers to pay for it. So, I mean, you decide whatever's best for you. You could ask people to pay $2 a month or $5 a month, or you could ask sponsors to sponsor you. The 1,000% ROI, there'll be a lot of people, I think, who would sponsor that kind of a thing. There'd be some universities, some colleges, and some people who are, if it's people who are supplying the stuff, the arts and crafts stuff and the stuff that you need to make cheese or, whatever, stuff you need to make homemade beer. I mean, people who sell seeds like you did, you bought with your peas. I thought you'd be impressed too that I found the old photographs of your townhouse with the peas. So I'll put this in the chat box for you, Andrew. Uh,
Yeah. Thanks.
and so you can just cut it out of the chat box and you'll see it. Yeah, and you probably should subscribe to it just because it's free, and it's a weekly newsletter, so it won't spam you all the time. But you can subscribe to it for a couple months and then unsubscribe. And he won't share your email address with anyone else, so that's fine. But you'll get a sense of it's pretty successful. And one of the newsletters that he's competing with, and his is better in my opinion, has about 1.5 million people who have subscribed to it. They've been around longer, and they just sold for $30 million, right?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, which was fantastic.
Um,
So, so,
I'll,
so,
I'll be I'll be right back.
oh yeah.
I'm just busting for the toilet.
Oh no, you go ahead. I'm going to pause the recording.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll be right back.
Sure. Okay, so just before we got going, quite some time ago now, I did want to show you some of what other people are doing, and actually some of the stuff that Dawn and I are doing as well. And I don't even know where to begin because I got so many of them. But before I did do that, I wanted to tell you one more story about skill sharing. One of my friends is a world famous architect. I won't mention his name because it's not really relevant. He's an indigenous person, and he fell on hard times. Architects are like many entrepreneurs. They have careers that go up and down. Sometimes they've got more money than they know what to do with, and other times they have almost none. And so this individual, well into his 70s, fell on financial hard times, and he came to see me for some coaching. And part of what I do as a coach is to understand what skills they have, because at some point, if you don't have any money and you don't have any assets, but you have some skills, you can turn skills into some cash, right? Which I think is what you're tending towards, whether it's a newsletter or it's Zoom coaching or it's something else. But I'll tell you this because I think you'll enjoy the story and I think it's relevant. So I asked him about his life and his experiences, and he told me when he was in his late 30s, early 40s, he got very, very sick. And the hospital and the doctors couldn't figure out what's wrong with him. They thought he was going to pass away. And he went back to his tribe, and I won't mention where it is because it might give away who the individual is. He went back to his tribe, and the elders took one look at him and said, "You're sick from eating white man food. You can't, indigenous people have been in North America probably for 30,000 years. They eat venison, they eat berries, probably roots and other things. They don't eat craft dinner and processed foods. They just don't go to McDonald's, right?" So it was making him very, very sick. So they put him in a sweat lodge for 3 days. He could have some water, but no food. And he said by the third day, he could see all this green ooze coming out of his pores and his skin, and he smelled horrible. All these poisons were coming out of his body. And there's a whole lore that goes into sweat lodge training. All right, there's 30,000 years of lore. And so the elders taught him about that. And there you have it. And so after a few days, he felt better. And within a few weeks, on a proper diet for him, he had recovered and he resumed his career. I said, that's an incredible story. And I have a property, and again, I won't mention where it is, which was vacant and had a beautiful pond on it, but there's nothing happening on it. And I said to him, would you consider maybe setting up a sweat lodge on the property? So, oh, that's a great idea, because he didn't have one. And I said, I think that'd be awesome. And I said, well, we're both old, so two old men can't go build a sweat lodge. We're going to need some young people. He said, no problem. I got lots of, young people who kind of follow him. And so we actually went out of this property. We went into the bush. I didn't do much. He did more than I did, but I was there. And we cut down saplings, and we created a sweat lodge. So it's quite spherical, and it's supposed to have buffalo hides on it, to provide an enclosure. But we're not going to shoot buffalo, so we have blankets and other things. And then there's a fireplace, a fire pit, basically, where you heat up igneous stones. They have to be igneous; they can't be shale, because if you heat up shale, there's water in it, explodes. And the next thing you do, you have one eye instead of two. I got one ear instead of two, but I would rather have both my eyes. So you get igneous rocks, you can heat them up, and then you bring them into there. So you go inside the sweat lodge, and this individual, he obviously knows the lore, because he's studied it now for decades. And there's a little bit of tobacco. There's no marijuana. There's no alcohol. Certainly no alcohol, no marijuana. But they grow their own tobacco, so that it doesn't have like 1,000 poisons in it. And there's a little bit of tobacco, not much, but a little bit of that. There's some drumming. There's some prayers. And I could only stay in there for an hour and a half. But other people could stay longer. And you sweat out all the poisons as much as you can tolerate. And so I said to him, I'll call him Bill, that's not his real name. I said, Bill, this is really fantastic. I think lots of white people and obviously indigenous people would come and would pay for this training. Oh, he said, Bruce, it's 30,000 years of tradition. You can't charge for this knowledge. We cannot. I said, white people have no trouble, charging for their knowledge. I do some coaching, I get paid for that most of the time. But he said, I can't charge for it. I said, okay, I didn't know that. I respect that. So I thought about it for another day or two, and I said, well, what if you built with all these wonderful young people, what if you built 8 glamping sites around the pond? Basically, nice tents with a sleeping platform and a bed and some other stuff. Because a lot of people today, they're not like you were when you were a boy and I was a boy. I'm okay with the ground sheet, and sleeping on the ground. But today, even young people want something a little better than that. That's my experience. So he said, oh, that right. And I said, you could charge for that. So, and 8 is a very important number in the indigenous community. There's a whole lot of lore on that. I couldn't even tell you what it is. But anyway, he and his group built 8 glamping sites, and he charges $250 a night, and he does about 200 nights a year. They do their, I don't go in the wintertime, but they do their sweat lodge training in the winter too. So it's year round, Andrew. It's one of the things you can do in the winter in Canada. You know, you can go in a sweat lodge and enjoy it. But I'll go in July or summer, but other people go year round. So he and one of his key guys, whose name I'll call him Joe, again, not his real name. So there's Bill, who's now well into his 80s, and then there's Joe, who's in his 40s, like you are, but back then it was 70s and 30s. They gross about $400,000 a year from the property, and they pay me a little bit of land rent, but it's not very much. But it saved his you know, he has a family he has to take care of and himself, and then these young people, and lots of people go there now because he's an Indigenous person, and also because I coached him. Although he made the decision, there were no building permits issued for that, and there is probably no RCMP officer, police officer, local bylaw officer, or anyone else who would go out and disturb an Indigenous religious ceremony. So they have never been bothered by white man's law, right? For which they have zero respect. So,
would they need building permits for temporary structures?
well, their tents are bigger than the maximum size of 15 square meters, so they're bigger. They're probably,
Yeah, but they're not fixed to the ground, so
well,
how they couldn't
they're
argue
on
that.
there is a deck, which is, you know, obviously on deck blocks and whatever. It doesn't matter. The zoning is not commercial tourism. It is not. It is just a rural residential lot that I happen to own, that, you know, that I allowed these, and they've been there for, Jesus, it's got to be at least a decade now. And like I said, they pay me a little bit of land rent. I think I get, you know, like $1,100 a month. So if you think about it, if they're grossing $400,000 and they're paying $12,000 or $13,000 to their landlord, it's not very much. I could certainly raise the rent. They could afford it now, but I haven't raised the rent in 10 years. You know, they the first of every month, I'm sure if I looked at my bank account, there'd be $1,100 there. You know, they're happy to remit that, I'm sure. So you know, but it has been a wonderful experience for me personally, but also for now literally hundreds, possibly even thousands, but many hundreds of people have gone there, maybe thousands now. So the reason I tell you that is there's a real longing for authenticity, and Mr. 1,000% ROI, that article that hopefully you and I will publish, and maybe you'll put it in your newsletter if you start one. You know, to me, I'll bet you there's around the world there's 100 million people interested in that. And you know what the motto of the tiny house movement is, right? Less house, more life.
Yeah, I
And
would agree.
I'll give you an example of that. Next to the barn dominium, there's a young man by the name of George. He is a project manager for a local construction firm. He makes about $85,000 a year. And his girlfriend, I think maybe wife now, her name is Brett, and she works for a jewelry store. She makes about $55,000 a year. So between the two of them, they probably have, you know, $140,000, $150,000 in family income, and they have more money than I do. You know, my income is much higher, but that, you know, I have a lot of expenses against that, including some huge loss makers. So, which is unfortunate for your old dad. But what I'm saying is George and Brett, you know, have this very nice tiny house that they built themselves. It cost them $54,000 and it's humongous. They park it next to the barn dominium. They pay $515 a month to park it there. They hook up to our electricity, our water, and our septic system. And they have a couple of workshops up there, which I think Brett does jewelry and George does woodworking, but they have regular jobs too. And they're always sending me emails, you know, we're in Costa Rica for 2 weeks. You know, we're doing, you know, we're in Hawaii on a farm somewhere, you know, riding horses, and they're having experiences. They don't have any kids yet, but they have a fantastic life and with very little stress, and they have no debt at all. It's like zero. So the motto of the tiny house movement is less house, more life. They don't want to be mortgage poor. They don't want to be house poor. And I come back to Mr. 1000% ROI and what we've been working on now for a little while. Um, like I said, I mean, I'm trying to encourage you to start your newsletter, maybe do some Zoom coaching and some other things that you might do, but it can have a real life, an RL component to it, right? RL, real life. Because if you buy your farm, people will come from all over, in my opinion, to work with you, to learn some of the skills that you've developed.
No, that's interesting. And I was actually thinking about pushing the publicity out through YouTube, for example, right? Where you can do, say, I don't know. I think personally, I'd be pushing it to do every 2 weeks. There's a lot of filming and editing. One, a YouTube segment. If you were to do 10 minutes, it would probably take me an entire weekend of filming and probably 2 weeks of editing to basically make something that is, doesn't look homemade, but it's not going to be professional standard either. Something passable. But what I really think, from my experience so far with social media and getting these things kicked off, you basically need to, I'm not going to say cheat the system, but you need to work with how the system works. So I think before you can pull off anything these days, maybe back in the day when all this stuff was new and raw and much smaller, you could just start making content and just organically find people. But I think in this day, with the current set of algorithms and the way they prioritize for engagement, I don't think you can kick something like this off and make it viable without, say, having a core group of 20 volunteers that will, every time you publish something, they will well, obviously they subscribe first, right? And then every time an episode comes out, they immediately watch the entire thing. They press the like button. They put in at least 3 comments back and forth on each other. And they share it with at least one person. So if you had 20 people for the first, say, 10 episodes that would do all 5 of those things, then I think you can grow and find an audience and build it up. But without having, say, a key group of 20 volunteers at the start who will commit to doing, the all 5 of those things every time, I think you just fall on deaf ears. And it's almost impossible to kick it off.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that, Andrew. Just give me a second here. Hang on a second. I apologize. Give me 1 second. I want to see if I can find something for you.
Because YouTube is a lot of work to do this stuff. You got to find guests. So I've got to find sponsors for the video. I've got to find guests. Like, say, the yogurt maker, for example, right? It can't just be me just sitting there filming the entire thing. It's gonna be really boring. So it'd be much better if I gave it to somebody and go, here's this yogurt maker. It's great. Give it to him for a week. Come back. How did you go? What did you find out? Let's break down the numbers. Would you do it again? All that kind of stuff. Give them the yogurt maker at the end of it, and then find the yogurt maker suppliers that will put me on their website and spruik it at their end as well.
Yeah, I get
There's
it.
a lot of work, I think, at the beginning to kick all this stuff off.
Yeah.
Which I'm prepared to do, but
so I was looking for some of Jessica's TikTok videos. So Jessica has an iPhone and she has a stand, right, or tripod, and she'll put her iPhone up here, and she will do a TikTok video. It takes her about 10 minutes to do a TikTok video. So she'll put she takes them down, unfortunately, but so I couldn't find the link. but she'll put her iPhone there and she'll look at the iPhone and say, hey, listen, I'm making a form-fitting dress and I'm carving out the bust, and here's how I did the pattern, and here's how I did the geometry. This particular young woman that I'm designing for has, certain dimensions. She'll mention them, and then she'll show herself sewing difficult seams and different things. And then of course she'll move the phone and continue on discussion. So she'll film about 10 minutes of her talking and work, and it helps that she's an attractive young woman. But anyway, so she'll do that. So she has about 10 minutes of video.
It's not helpful. It's critical.
There's no question about it. You don't look the same as Jessica, with all due respect, frankly, nor do I. But
or her friend models. Like, I've seen her stuff. Actually, my Instagram thinks I'm female because I did a lot of crafting stuff, right? So it's sending me all this kind of stuff all the time.
So anyway, so she will get on TikTok, she will get 90,000 to 300,000 views in 2 or 3 days. And so she has 10 minutes of video. She has film editing stuff. She does it herself, and she's very good. She'll add music and she'll cut it down into probably 1 to 2 minute videos. She can do it herself. She can do a TikTok video that will have, like I said, 90,000 to 300,000 views in under an hour. I have a YouTube channel, as you know, and I'm not nearly as pretty as Jessica or Taylor Swift. I get that. My #1 video on my YouTube channel has 5,500 views. But if it's the right 5,500 people for my coaching practice, that's what counts. And a lot of my content is unlisted, like this video will be, which goes on my YouTube channel. And some of those videos have 3 views. Some of them have 5. But if it's the right 3 people, the right 5 people, or the right 2 people in this case, that's fine. This is something that you'll be able to go back to, Andrew, if there's some, I know Dad said something on the video. I wonder what it was about sweat lodge training. I think it's on that video. I'm going to check it. So you won't watch an hour and a half of us talking. How boring would that be? But you might look for the sweat lodge portion or something else. So I think you could start a YouTube channel, and you certainly would have a TikTok channel, and they're free. And I can't tell you the number of people I coach who do much better videos than I do. I mean, no question about it. Who are like Jessica. They have I don't even have a tripod. If I want to do a self video, it's kind of shaky. For me, I'm 72. I don't care. If people don't like my videos, don't watch them. I'm okay with that. Go and watch Netflix. Be mindless. I get that. But for a lot of the people I coach who are in their 30s and 40s, like you are, they are able to do a better job on the videos. But it doesn't have to be the kind of video that I'm going to show you one just for the hell of it, because I happen to like this video, and I'll just show you one young woman what she has done, and see if I can find it for you. I think I have it on this here. Pretty sure I have it somewhere. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. So this is a young woman.
While we're filling in time.
Yeah.
You know what? I had a revelation the other day.
Yeah.
And the price that you pay at the store? So you go into a store and you think you're buying a $10 item, right?
Yeah.
It is not $10. Because before you get the $10 to buy that, you have to earn the income. So you have to pay 30% off the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Say if your average income, your average tax is 30%, that item is actually $13.
100%. That is actually something that's in that article that I wrote. That you've done lots of that kind of calculation.
Yeah, but I never figured out how I could explain it to people until the other day I was like, oh, I can just tell people, hey, the price that you pay at the shop is not actually that price that you're seeing listed down.
No, you're 100% right. Yeah. I love that. But that's part of the coaching that you're going to do, in my opinion. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to stop recording it. I'm going to pause the recording.
Example.
So I just showed Andrew a video by Ali the Piper. The reason I did that, Andrew, is not to have a discussion about the existential value of what people are doing. I understand that there are big issues on the planet today. But the reason I showed you that is Allie the Piper. She recorded that with somebody called Buckets, who's on the drums. AC/DC, which is an Australian band that I thought was relevant, maybe, and I've always been a fan. And she's become a worldwide phenomenon, right? And it's based on TikTok. And Jessica, your sister Jessica, is really doing something that you would respect. She understands the power of her brand. She protects the power of her brand. She has her own mind. You know, she comes to me for coaching, doesn't pay any attention to me. I can tell you that. And you know, just like you, she's very independent in thought. You and your brother are politically very aligned. Jessica and you are aligned in terms of the strength of your minds and your strength of purpose and direction. I totally respect that. I mean, I've got some great kids, and wonderful grandchildren, by the way. So the reason I showed it to you though is I get that. I mean, you can make your videos, they will have great content, and maybe you'll do better than me. Maybe your #1 video will have more than 5,500 views. I'm sure it will, but it won't have 300,000 or a million or 2 million, which Allie might have or Jessica might have. But if it's the right 5,500 people, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. If I can get all 5,500 to sign up to a newsletter, that would be worth it.
There you go. So what I'm saying to you is, like, I produce content for my YouTube channel, which is just, I record these Zoom meetings, I don't edit them, I put them on YouTube, either public, a few, and many more unlisted. And that's what I do. So for somebody my age, that's completely satisfactory. For somebody who's trying to do what you're doing, you will do it at a level better. But Allie the Piper, Jess at proofcanada.ca, you don't have to be at James Cameron's level.
No, I actually think it would work against you to be too slick, because the whole point of this
That's
thing
what
is
they're
home
teaching.
production and being able to do stuff yourself.
Yeah, and I just we're going to quit in a few minutes because I get tired. You know, it's 6 o'clock at night. You remember when I was probably in bed at 7 or 7:30. And you know, I really have enjoyed this. I just can't tell you how much I enjoy seeing you. But I just want to, just because we're recording it, I wanted to show you a couple of other very simple things that are going on today, that I think, again, you might be able to relate to. This is a young woman. Can you see my screen? Okay, it should say the Big Potato.
Yep.
So this is literally screen here. This is literally a big potato, and Idaho is. I've got clients in Idaho, and Idaho is famous for potatoes, right? It's like Prince Edward Island in Canada. Idaho is known for its potatoes, and this young woman was working for a potato manufacturing company, or food processor, I think. And they had this crazy idea, maybe she had the idea, I don't know, but to build a 3.5 ton potato, put it on a semi-trailer and take it all across the United States. It was called the Big Potato, the Big Idaho Potato. And it would promote Idaho and Idaho potatoes. And then after the tour was done, the company was going to scrap the Big Potato. And she said, "Ooh, I wonder if I could have that." He said, "Sure. What are you going to do with it?" She said, "I'm going to make it into an Airbnb." So she bought herself, I think it's about 3/4 of an acre. So that would be about 0.3 of a hectare. So not very big. She bought some cheap land in Idaho, which is really basically a desert. And she put the Big Potato there. There's a little spa here. You know, you've got a shower, you've got like a steam room, you've got, you know, obviously a bathroom there. And she turned this into a really cute little Airbnb. And the other thing, sorry, I'm just going to come back we're going to stop sharing. I'll just talk to it. So the reason I show you that is she got her Big Potato for free. She bought this cheapo piece of land. She built, you know, this, you know, in this little sort of tower. I don't know what you call it, stainless steel or something. No, it's not stainless
It would
steel.
be
Corrugated.
it's a water tank.
It's
She
a
used
water
a
tank.
water
Thank
tank.
you. It's a water
Yeah.
tank. She and her 70-year-old mother built this thing, right?
Yeah.
But wait,
I'm impressed.
and it gets better. And she built a little corral, and she bought a mini cow, which Dawn would really love. And the mini cow's name is Dolly. So if you're a guest in the Big Potato, you get to come to the Big Potato, and it comes with a nice bottle of wine, and you could go there with your girlfriend or your wife or your partner, and you can, get a steam bath, and you can do all kinds of things in the, I guess, what did you call it, a water container?
It's a water tank. Yeah.
Water tank, yeah. You can do all
Yeah.
kinds of nice things in there. You can have fun, but you are required, as a guest, to groom Dolly. And you don't actually have to feed her or anything else. She has, she'll do that. She and her mother built that thing, and it was for like super dirt cheap. It's one of the top listings in North America in the Airbnb. It's unbelievable. So you and I could go out and build a tiny house town and spend millions of dollars. I don't think we're going to do any better than the Big Potato. And so that's why I'm constantly coming back to you. I want you to think of a theme. And to my way of thinking, as your friend, your father, your coach, Mr. 1000% ROI is the thing. I think it's so intrinsic to you, Andrew. You could teach. So I think there's a hunger there for authenticity and learning. And as I said to you when we started this conversation, I wish I had a little box, a little AI box that I could implant your brain there, so I could ask you questions all the time, because you have such a different brain. And I think that I wanted to show you what other people are doing. So theme is extremely important. Maybe this isn't the theme, but I think it is. All right.
Yeah. That's why I like the teepee as the theme, because you will not find that in Australia.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But maybe not, because Australians may go crazy about cultural appropriation and all this other bullshit.
They might. I wrote some books, learning outcome novels, where I talk about the Hopi people. Now, I lived with the Hopi people as a young man. I was 19. I lived in Four Corners for 6 months with the Hopi in a wind cave. And I think I know something about the Hopi. I don't know everything about being a Hopi. I don't know everything about being an indigenous person, because I'm not. But I know something about it. And if you were to tell me that I'm not allowed to write about indigenous people, I would say F off, right? Like, I mean, it's like you can't write about some of the characters in my books are Black. Some of them are Muslim. Some of them are Jewish. Many of them are Christians. I mean, what the hell? I mean, I suppose, a Protestant in Ireland can't write about a Catholic. I mean, that's ridiculous, in my opinion. So I think you have something that's really important, and it's a mission, but it also make money for you. And I think that's okay. And I'm going to end this conversation with two things. One, I want you to think about some more questions and ideas. If you want to do another session with me, I'd be happy to do, because I've only shown you about a third of the stuff that I have. But what I would want you to do, which I ask all the people I coach to do, is you create the agenda next time. So you say, okay, I have 10 questions, or I have 5 questions for Pops. That'll be the agenda, because I don't want to set the agenda, because it's your time, really. Okay, I'm here if you want for some help. And the other thing I was going to say, I can't remember. I guess that's it. Other than give Godric and Cedric a hug for me. I love those kids, man. I have a little shrine upstairs. I've got Leighton and Cora and Grace and Godric and Cedric. I say good morning, good night to the 5 of them. And I had some good news last week. Little Grace, who's been a little slow to walk, is now walking. She had some health problems. So Rachel sent me a video of her learning how to walk. She's well into her second year now. So most kids have been walking for some time. She's able to do it. And then it's kind of a secret, but in our family, there are no secrets. Rachel and Pat probably will try for another baby later this year. So we might have some more nephews and nieces for the boys. All right. I love you, Andrew.
Love you.
See ya. This will be on YouTube in an hour or so, and I'll send you the link.
All right. And I'll read the article, and I'm going to do a couple little sample scripts for what I think the YouTube could look like.
I can't wait to see it. See it.
Okay.